Welcome to the ALX show, where we talk faith, family, and all things real estate. Let's get to it. Hello, Josh, and welcome to episode 6 of the ALX show. Today, I want to talk about something that's a little bit more timely and relevant than maybe some of our other episodes. So, listeners may be seeing this one ahead of some of the other episodes on social media and some of the other channels. But today, I wanted to talk about a settlement with realtors. And so I saw this Wall Street Journal article last week. It's called Realtors Reckon with a Seismic Shift to How They Get Paid. So the opening paragraph here, it says, last week, the National Association of Realtors settled legal claims that the real estate industry conspired to keep commissions artificially high. The settlement will likely change how much of a home sales price will find its way into an agent's hands. And then it kind of goes into more detail, of course. So I'm curious from you, Josh, being a realtor, being a real estate investment expert, and I know you're not a lawyer and you don't know all the details of maybe the legal claim, but I wanted to see if you could kind of catch the people up on what is going on. What is this claim about? How does the process work to begin with? Like, what's the gist, the summary of all this? I guess controversy that's going on right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, traditionally, if you're going to buy a house and you've got two agents involved, you've got a seller's agent or a listing agent and a buyer's agent. And those two agents are going to be compensated based on performance, right when the house sells. And the way that we've always known it is sellers will typically agree to pay their agent a certain percentage of the sales price. The selling agent will then agree to pay a percentage of that to the buyer's agent. So the commissions are actually coming from the seller to the seller's agent, and from there they're being split between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. So let's say that you're going to sell a house and you agree to pay a commission of 6%. Well, within that listing agreement, you're going to agree with your seller's agent that yes, I'm going to pay 6%, but you're going to agree to pay 3% to that buyer's agent. So traditionally, that's how it's been settled. That's how it's been set up. When you go to as an agent, when you go to list a house on MLS, multiple listing service, uh, by rule, you're required to put on the listing what you are authorized to pay the buyer's agent, and that's just been an association rule uh, for for many years. I don't know how long it goes back. It's been a long time. So that way, when a buyer's agent goes to look at that listing, they can see what the compensation is if they bring a buyer and that buyer closes.
Okay.
So it's an agreement. So the multiple listing service is essentially it's an association agreement that realtors are going to work together to get homes sold and bought. And like I said, traditionally, the seller is the one that agrees to pay a commission to their agent, the selling agent. That agent then agrees to split that commission with the buyer's agent. Now, one issue is, you've read a lot and heard a lot about how these commissions are fixed or they're non-negotiable. That's not true. They're always negotiable. The one thing that a lot of people say, well, it's always 6%. Um, Now, it typically is 6%, so 5 to 6%. It really depends on the market and, how easily homes are being sold. In a really strong market where homes are moving quickly, you'll see listing agents maybe back off their commission a little bit. When it's a tougher market to sell in and it requires more work, more resources, more in resources, including agents' money to market, then they'll they'll typically say, no, we're gonna stand at that 3%, or stay at the 3%. So does that answer your question? I guess kind of as like how it functions, how the commissions function, how they move through the transaction.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And from what I understand, that 3% goes to the broker, and then if and then it's further split from there from the broker to the realtor. Is that true? And I only ask because I've seen Selling Sunset, and that's what they talk about.
That's
So
right. That's right.
okay, okay,
So you're dealing when you're listing or buying homes. Every agent works under a broker.
Okay.
and the commissions go to the broker, and then that agent has a commission split agreement with the broker.
Right.
So the broker pays the agent their percentage, and they keep whatever theirs is based on the agreement they've got in place.
Okay. Okay. I'm
And
glad
that's different.
my
That varies across different brokerages.
okay. I'm glad my trash TV on Netflix is actually paying off. I'm learning things. Yeah, no, so I've had a realtor ask me before if they felt this was a couple of years ago, if they felt like the commissions that went to them was appropriate. And I thought it was an odd question, but I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, you're doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. I've always thought, because it's a time sensitive transaction, you should get a premium for that. I mean, they're working all hours to get things done and move things around. And yeah, I always thought it was fine, but I thought it was an odd that this person asked me. But now that I see that there is actually a lot of controversy around that, and especially I'm thinking like, Zillow and Redfin and places like that, you can list your home there, and so maybe buyers and sellers feel like, well, I don't need the realtor anymore to do some of these things.
Mm.
But I know it's very technical. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that real estate agents are doing that, especially like on my behalf, that I'm not aware of. I don't know.
Well, and that's on us, right? As realtors, we need to do a better job of communicating what service we're providing. Because
Mhm.
you're right. If you don't know what your realtor's out doing, then maybe all it looks like is they're showing you a few houses, or they're putting your house on MLS, and they're just sitting back and just kind of waiting.
Right.
But the best realtors, that's not how they operate. The best realtors are on offense constantly, whether that's different marketing channels or networking, trying to making sure that your house is in the best position possible to sell at all times. Like, it's
Mm.
not a stagnant process. It's very dynamic. You're constantly marketing, constantly pushing, constantly promoting that property. Now, some agents, if someone feels, um, yeah, I don't know, maybe if someone feels bad about the commission, in a great market, I guess somebody might think that as if, hey, I get a listing, I put it on MLS and it sells immediately. I don't feel like I had to do that much. Uh, you know, sometimes you get great, sometimes that works out and that's great, but that's not always the case.
Right.
And the best agents, the highest performing agents, that is not how they handle their business. There's a lot more to it. And you can get away with that, just kind of doing the bare minimum when the market is, on fire and everything's selling like it was a couple years ago. Uh Now, as things have slowed down a bit, I mean, things are still moving because inventory is low. It takes a little bit more than that, and there's a lot of expense that goes in as a realtor, whether it's like maintaining your license, maintaining your association membership, the marketing, the consistent marketing, and all the time. The time that's spent that you're not compensated for. You can have a listing, you can have a buyer, you can go show houses, you can do everything right, do everything. I mean, to the best of your ability, and then not get paid anything, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it works out really well. Like, hey, I I put it all through all the marketing channels. I got it listed. I got a buyer quickly. We and we closed fast. And yeah, that was a nice commission check. It didn't take long to get the job done, but you don't see all the work and time that went into getting into that position and getting it out and presenting it in a way that allowed for it to sell quickly. Buyer, it's hard for me, like, it'd be rare that you have a buyer and they buy the 1st or 2nd house that they see. It usually doesn't work that way. There's usually a lot more time involved. There's showings involved, there's research involved. Not so much you need to negotiate the PSA, you need to, like, help with the inspection report, help with the coordinations. I mean, anything short of giving legal advice, that you're there as that seller or buyer's, advocate, uh, to help them get through the process, to help it go as smoothly as possible.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I think that was the case a couple of years ago with our real estate agent where it was a house that we found on Zillow and we went and saw it the next day and then we put in an offer and we got it and then it closed, not too long after that. But this person represented us on the selling side as well, selling our house. And so but I just assume, it's complicated, they're doing a lot and I just
Well,
and to your
it's
point, they don't get
yeah.
paid all the time. Like they got to save that money
No.
for,
No, and that was
for later.
negotiable, right? You didn't have to pay him whatever you paid him. Now
Mhm.
you agree typically now, and especially now with the NAR settlement, you've got to, with for buyers, you need to have um, a listing agreement in place. So and it protects both parties, right? It protects the agent so that they're putting in the time and money to help you find a house, then they're going to be compensated for that. Um, and now I know that we can get into this in a minute. Now you can be compensated kind of on a concierge service. You can be compensated just based on, hey, I'll show you so many houses. I'll help you negotiate the PSA. I'll help you work through comps. I'll help you, uh, through the closing process, whatever it is. But now, with the new rules, it's gonna be a little bit different, whereas before, it was just like, "Hey, yeah, it's on MLS, I can go see what the seller is willing to pay the buyer's agent, and, we kinda just that's what I'm gonna make, and, I'm gonna be a full service agent for you." Now it's negotiable between the buyer and the buyer's agent. So, you decide, "Well, we'll pay you a percentage of the home price, or I'd rather, um, pay you like per service, or like in your situation, I found the house on Zillow, so we don't need to go through all that. I just would like your help in negotiating the contract and helping me get through close, just to understand the process and help me walk through the process." So and then I think that's where this can is really beneficial, because then you really are paying for just what you need. And so that's
Mhm.
where I think both parties, when the sellers get the agent, excuse me, the agent is being compensated for the time and effort that they put in and the expertise, and then you're paying just for exactly what you need. So, I mean, that's what really I think could is gonna ultimately be the outcome. And it's gonna be interesting how we get there, because no one's used to doing business that way. So it's gonna come there's gonna be a lot of new and, maybe strange conversations with, well, how do we price this service? Like, what's worth what? Like, what do you really need? Um, and then when you come to an agreement on what you're gonna provide as a buyer's agent and what it's gonna cost, but then something comes up where you need a little bit more, or you need to go beyond the original agreement. Now do you have to renegotiate pricing? And so that's gonna be there's certainly some negatives to it. I mean, we can get into that. You can argue both sides. There's positives and negatives to how this is gonna impact the industry moving forward.
Yeah, okay. So let's go there. The Wall Street Journal article does mention, it said that, a potential outcome, like you said, is that buyer's agents might provide a fee for service model. It costs this much to write an
Yeah.
offer, this much for a home inspection. But back up a little bit and tell us a little bit about what is the main disagreement that's going on. So you mentioned something about how,
Yeah.
because of the way the MLS is structured, you have to put that buyer's agent commission there. And so the main contention is that it seemingly artificially raises the price of homes, and so people are upset about that. They're upset that they don't know that it's negotiable. So yeah, talk about, like, what is the main contention here, and then what is the pros and cons of what you see some of the outcomes might be, or where it might go from here.
Yeah, so the contention is that buyers don't have a say. That's what they're saying, that buyers don't have a say in what they pay,
Okay.
what their agent gets paid.
Okay.
It's already, worked out basically on their behalf through the way that it's currently structured, where the seller pays a commission to the seller's agent, and then the seller's agent agrees to split with the buyer's agent. They're saying that by putting that on MLS, well, the buyer doesn't have any. There's no negotiation between the buyer and the buyer's agent as far as what they're going to pay for their agent service, and that fee, the commission, um, that the seller is going to pay, comes out of the sales price. So the seller knows they're going to have to pay that 6%. I mean, they agreed to it. So in order to compensate for it, they're gonna make it up in the sales price. So they're saying that by automatically saying every buyer's agent, if a buyer's agent sells this house, you get 3%. The seller knowing that, well, I'm gonna uh, make sure I account for that in the sales price. That the price of the homes is higher than it would have been had the buyer and the buyer's agent just worked out the compensation on their own.
Okay. But it seems that, I mean, any transaction is voluntary, right? I mean, so buyers are saying, like, looking at that price and going, yeah, I mean,
And
I'll pay
that's what
that.
I don't quite understand. Yeah, I've never been in a situation where it's not negotiable. I mean, when you fill out a listing agreement, like, both parties agree. Um, and then, you can even negotiate it up to the point when you make an offer on a house,
Mhm,
like a buyer's
mhm.
agent, it's negotiable all the way through. And that's what National Association of Realtors is saying. That's what everybody that knows the business will say. Nothing's fixed. Like, there's no, um like no one's forced to pay anything. You enter into agreements where you lay out how parties are gonna be compensated. But those are agreements that both parties, you know, voluntarily agree to. There's nothing there's nobody's being forced to pay anything. One thing that people would argue is, so, okay, I hear what you're saying, Josh. So if I can go in and say, "I've got a buyer or I've got a seller and who, he only wants to pay 4%, well, I'm gonna take 2% and then and then I'm gonna agree to give the other 2% to the buyer's agent, but when I put that listing on MLS and I say the buyer's agent compensation is 2% and that buyer's agent sees another house where the buyer's agent, commission is 3%, where do you think they're gonna direct
Right.
their buyer to? And, that's a fair point that, you know, if that happens, like, no one really knows. Like, no one really knows. The buyers would have to tell you whether or not that's how they're directing their clients. But agents are called to be fiduciaries on behalf of their clients. We are not supposed to be driven by, commissions, right?
Yeah.
So, really what you would hope would happen is every realtor would, yes, everyone should be compensated for their service, but that realtors would not be, directing their clients to homes based on how much they get paid. Rather, they'd be directing their clients to homes, based on what their clients' needs are, what their wants are. And really, the agents that do that are the ones that stick around. The ones that are just chasing money constantly, uh, they probably don't have a long future because reputation is everything.
Mm.
And, it becomes pretty clear. Like, people's character comes out pretty clearly, right? If do you have your client's interest, in mind, or do you have your own? And that's just something that you've got to decide when you're hiring these agents, right? That's part of the interview process, the evaluation process of when you decide to work with somebody.
I think that's an important point. I remember reading the book Freakonomics a long time ago, and there was a section about realtor basically commissions that when they were selling their own house, the prices were higher. They were, shorter listing. They were better marketed, essentially. So I know there's that incentive that that grips at the heart of everyone that's involved in transactions like this. But that's why that character is really key for a good realtor.
Yeah. Yeah, you just wanna make sure you're working with somebody you can trust. We talk about on this podcast, trust, we talk about that all the
Yeah,
time, and
yeah,
that's key here too. You need to make
yeah.
sure that you're working with someone that you can trust. Set the expectations out, very clearly in the beginning, and if you're working with a great realtor, and there's lots of great realtors out there, they will want to, find something that you're pleased with, that you're happy with, that's gonna make you wanna refer them to someone else. A client's business there's lot marketing's involved, that's important, but referrals are the best type of marketing for in any business, but especially for realtors. So a realtor's reputation is incredibly important. Um, so the realtors that are very successful, the ones that last, more often than not, I think you'll find out that they're not scrolling down to the bottom of the listing and just looking for, "Hey, how can I make the most money?" They're looking to do the best job possible for that client, knowing that this is potential repeatable business, this is potential referral business, and not to mention that it's our duty as realtors to be a fiduciary, to put the client's best interest in front of our own. So, and there's agents out there. I would, and I can't speak for everyone, but I know many, many agents out there that's how they feel, that's how they operate. So, there is that argument going back that's saying, well, yeah, we can. It's negotiable, but then agents are just going to drive business to whoever's paying the most, to buyer's agent commission or compensation. But I'd argue that that most agents, that are playing the long game are not gonna operate that way.
Okay. Well, I know you're, again, not a legal expert. You don't have a crystal ball, and this is an unfolding case. But what do you see as being maybe some possible implications or shifts that will happen in the future, maybe near term or long term? I know one of the things that the article mentions is that maybe some realtors will just start getting a side gig, or maybe they'll start, instead of, buying and selling homes on behalf of others, they'll start flipping homes, or they'll just go into another sector of the real estate market.
Yeah.
How do you see some of those things playing out?
Yeah, I think a lot of agents, the average agent, I mean, different sources have different numbers, but probably makes $65,000-$70,000 a year, somewhere in there. Um, and so it's not like a lot of these agents are just making a ton of money.
Mm,
Um, it's a good living, but it's not. You can go find other work that could probably pay comparably, right? And a lot of these agents have lots of skills. They could go out and do something else. So many of them that focus primarily on buyers are probably looking at it that way and saying, well, before I could plan to do so many transactions a year, I would know that, based on 2 or 3% on per transaction, kind of have an average sales price. Every most agents have kind of a niche sales price or level of home that they like to work. So you can kind of forecast what you're going to make. Now it's all up in the air.
mm,
So there's so much uncertainty. I think agents that have um, you know, hi historically focused just on buyers have some tough questions about and maybe probably a lot of them, the top performers will probably wait and see, and they'll figure out a way to adapt and keep moving. But a lot of agents that kinda do it, like you said, as side gigs or, um, have other jobs, maybe are new, don't haven't, really haven't broken in yet, they might be thinking, it's not worth it for me anymore."
mm,
Um,
yeah.
so and that has real implications, there's, um, on the home buying process. I mean, really from a competitive standpoint, the agents that stay in probably have more opportunities, but, it's gonna be just a different landscape. If you're focusing on listings, if you're a seller's agent, I doubt it'll change much for seller's agents, probably 2 or 3%. Um, and that's what it's always been. So I don't the agents that do most of their business are on listings, probably they'll be just fine, kind of business as usual. It's the agents that focus a lot of their business on buyers, that are and there's a lot of agents out there that do that it's, really going to impact. So those agents will, um, either figure out like, they'll adapt, and they'll figure out how, um, to do an itemized service or, really kinda a concierge-based service on what their buyer needs. They'll focus on becoming listing agents or sellers agents, or yeah, they'll probably have other opportunities, and they might decide that those opportunities make more sense at this point, with there being so much uncertainty, but knowing that the way compensation has been is changing. It's
Mm.
it's no longer something that they can forecast with any level of confidence. And conversations are just going to get more and more tricky. Like, how do we price this? What's competitive? What's market for showing houses? What's market for working through a PSA? I mean, we're not attorneys, right? We're just helping through the process. So, what's the market rate for that? All that has to be established, and it will. But are the agents that are working right now, are they willing to wait? Can they wait? I mean, it's been slow already. Where transactions are way down, so it's already hard on agents, and this just makes it harder. So I think a lot of agents will leave. Um, the ones that stay and figure it out, I mean, could be great opportunity. So um, good for some, tough for others, but it's going to have significant impact on the industry for sure.
Yeah, it seems like a tough time to have this huge legal change be happening. I mean, it's already a tough market, and this, like to your point, this just makes it a lot harder. Is there any way, as a realtor yourself, is there any way you think your business is going to change, or are you just going to kind of business as usual, wait and see how it plays out, and just keep moving along?
Yeah, I focus on listings. That's my um, mentor, realtor mentor Randy. He focuses on listings, and he encourages me to do the same. And that's I think as long as you're if you're focused on listings, there's a lot of homes out there to sell. It's highly competitive. There's a lot of agents that focus on listings, but it doesn't change much for me yet. We'll have to wait and see how things change, how the industry changes, how the rules impact things, the rule changes. But as far as today, it's business as usual. You have to keep marketing, you have to keep networking, you have to keep staying up to date with the market and economic trends and mortgage rates. Nothing changes. For me, the way I look at this is it's just an opportunity. I don't have any plans of leaving, so I think it's not an opportunity just to improve and really, you know, take advantage of potentially there being less agents to compete against. But that also means that the ones that stick around are probably really good. So, it'll be interesting. But as far as day in and day out, I don't know that it changes anything for any agents yet, unless the ones that just don't have any business going on right now and they need to make a change and they're deciding that, yeah, this is kind of the final straw, so I need to go do something else.
Okay. Well, thank you for walking us through that. I know this is a complicated issue, and it's like I said, still unfolding. But I think it's good to kind of keep up. Like, okay, here's what's happening in your network of realtors. All you
Well, I'll say
listeners,
this real quick,
yeah,
Brandon, before we go. If you're buyers, one thing to keep in mind is, um, really understand the buying process. And if you bought a house, you probably do. You'll be fine. But if you haven't, find a friend that's a realtor. You probably have one, or just talk to a realtor. Most realtors won't charge you to do this, and just talk through the process and determine uh, what you need or what you need help with, what you'd like help with. Because some people might think, well, I'll just go alone and not use an agent. And that's fine if you have experience to do so and you know what you're doing, and that's great. That's great. It'll save you money. But if you don't, buying a house is complicated. It's a huge decision. It's a big financial decision, obviously. Agents are a good thing. Like the right agent can really save you time, can save you money, can give you peace. Um, so really, really consider that, and think through, like, it's not just a fee. I mean, there's a value attached to that fee. So I think sometimes, like in this, in all this discussion, it's kind of been commoditized a little bit, but that's not true. Agents provide a value. That's not a commoditized,
yeah.
value. It's unique and individual, and every house buying situation is different. So you really want to consider that before just, oh, I don't need an agent or commissions change, or there's still a lot of value in having somebody walk through the process. And if you do have an agent, you also want to think about, well, how am I going to compensate that agent? You need to, have that conversation with the buyer's agent, and also need to determine if, well, is my compensation, can I roll that into my financing? That's something, you'd have to talk to your mortgage provider about. But this opens up a lot of new conversation, lot of questions and conversation. Before, because commissions were built into the sales price, it could be included in your mortgage, right? Because you don't pay it out of pocket. It's just included in the sales price. So how does that change now? Like, does that mean more cash? You have to have more cash available to close a home. So there's just a lot of things just to be aware of, before you start your process, before you start your journey, so you're not, you don't get surprised by things, and you feel comfortable, and like, you kind of know what you're doing, or you have people around you that know what they're doing, as they guide you or as you walk through that process.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the process because I've bought 2 homes now, and it is very complicated. I mean, you have all of the paperwork. I mean, it's a big, thick stack of papers, and then you got title and escrow, and there's a, yeah, lender. Like, I didn't know who to go to for a lender, and so my realtor connected me there. I mean, there's just a million things going on. But I found, one of the things that's most helpful to have an agent is just their judgment. And I think that's where the trust and the character piece comes in because when we're looking at homes or, we're back and forth like, "Hey, what do you think about this home? What do you think about this?" The things that I want in a home, my agent has always been like, "Well, if you want those things, you're gonna be in this price range or in this location." And that's helpful to understand. But also, when we're looking at a home, it's like, is this a good home? Is $200 a square foot a good price for a home like this
Mhm.
based on everything that you know in this market, in this location? And that kind of judgment has been really, really helpful. So, in addition to the process, I think that that is an important component that you would pay for that is harder to see on paper, in a line item. Here's everything you're paying at the end of the day. But that kind of stuff is really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, great points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, Josh, again, thank you. I know this is a really complicated thing, so appreciate you walking us through that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it unfolded. Maybe, as we talked about earlier, another episode on this to kind of recap on maybe where the conversation is, or the controversy, or the suit, where that kind of nets out, and what it looks like maybe a few weeks or months from now. So
Yeah, yeah,
we'll keep the
yeah,
people updated.
yeah, that sounds good.
Great. All right. Thanks, Josh. We'll talk soon.
Alright, sounds good. See you, Brandon.